Okay, so look, my name's Colin Moon. I am the service director at Luton Council. Been there for 2.5 years, just about 2.5 years. And today I really want to talk about homelessness and temporary accommodation and former tenants arrears in that homelessness space. So not traditionally council tenants, we've got lots of those, about 7,500, but I want to talk about homelessness today because that's where we're doing a bit of this work. So council tenants, this is just rent arrears, this is up to July. Council tenants, you can see where the rent arrears line is. That's current council tenants arrears, which you may think is quite a lot of money, but it's not really. It's over 2 million. The green line, former council tenants arrears, which is quite reasonably static. It's gone up a little bit. Our TA current arrears are below 1 million, and our former arrears, you can see where they are, just below 2 million. And the former arrears, our collection rate is that bottom line there that's been growing since we started this project. And I just wanted to just give you a little bit of background on our temporary accommodation, because at the moment we've got 1,027 in all forms of temporary accommodation. That may sound like a lot if you're a London authority, or some London authorities that won't sound a lot to you. But every month we're getting on average 460 homeless households approach the local authority. So that's quite a lot of households approaching us. So our figures are in that context, basically. So I just want to talk to you about what we've been doing and partnering Voicescape. So the whole project's probably started around November 2022. Essentially, we weren't collecting any money at all on former tenants arrears, temporary accommodation. If you saw that first initial slide or the second slide, we at one stage had 10 million former tenants arrears for temporary accommodation. And that was because we did nothing with them at all for a number of years. And at some point, we decided to reconcile them and decided that we couldn't collect a lot of it. And we had to do a really massive write-off, around 5 million, which was really painful, but we had to do it because it was just unwieldy. So when we started this project, we started off, it was 10 million, then it went down to about 5 million, and we took it from there. But how it works is that our team looks through the cases, and then they pass the cases. So for example, we look at the cases, those cases that have had agreements, and other cases, they sift them out. They pass the cohort to Voicescape. Voicescape then, as they call it, push those cases and send voice messages and text messages to the cohort who listen, or some of them don't listen because some of those numbers may be wrong. And some of them listen, and some of them will then transfer themselves into to the team who deal with them. Those who don't do that will get another text message, and so forth and so on. So essentially, we've got this service that essentially contacts our people for us, which is really, really good. And our people are responding to it, which is really, really good as well. So that's generally speaking what's been happening. You can see the figures there, how many cases that we have been contacting. And I'll talk a little bit later about the size of the team as well, shortly. So that's the activity. So sort of 5,000 plus attempted calls to 3, and basically we had 52% successfully delivered, which is really good from our point of view anyway. And you've got to realize we weren't doing a lot of work in this space at all. So this has just been a revelation as far as we're concerned. 2,100 of these were delivered cases who opted to transfer through. So that's a fair size of that cohort who decided to get through to us to talk about their arrears. 65% of all cases were received, who received a successful call or voicemail, went on to have at least one conversation with us, and usually that means setting up an agreement. And 85% of all unique tenants who listened to the recorded message went to have at least one conversation throughout the year. So that is all good. And peak time for transfers was between 9 and 11. Not that makes any difference when you're really, really, really busy. This is just a bit more information on those calls, but this is the first quarter of the year. So you can see from there, it's been quite successful, and we are really working with this. Just to talk to you about staffing at the moment, because for the debt team, when we looked at this, we said we needed 1 team leader and 3 officers dealing with this. And you can see from November 22, when we really started this work in earnest, what happened. We had 3 officers. We pulled in 14,000, and you can see going down the months. In March, we had 90,000. That's because we had a bit of a write back on the system. And then May was a really good month for us. We pulled in 84,000. For us, this is new money. I mean, every year we've got around a 500k bad debt provision, and this year we're probably going to surpass 500,000 in recovery for former tenants arrears. That's new money for us, so we don't have to touch our bad debt provision probably, which would be great, because then we can use it for something else, which is really, really good. And you know, the one particular officer in that 84,000 month collected 43,000. One particular officer, absolute star. So it works. So this is really successful for us, because essentially, as I'm saying before, this is new money for the council. Direct and indirect impacts are direct calls to almost 1,500 ex-licensees every week. So these are people who don't, you know, they're ex-licensees, they're somewhere else in Luton or other places, you know, but we're still calling them. And if we were to put staff resources to this, proper staff resources, it would be 7 to 10 people, which we just will not be able to afford. Over 25,000 cash collections during Voicescape calls over the last 10 months, and quite a lot of agreements made as well. Officers are getting callbacks outside of Voicescape days, which basically means when we're not using Voicescapes, we use them twice a day. 2 times during the week. People are still calling us during the other days, so it's really working. So people are choosing to call us when they can. It's not always when Voicescape, where we're using Voicescape. And some ex-licensees check their accounts online and make payments without officer intervention. So, you know, this is brilliant. You know, people just doing stuff without us asking, which is really great. So that's all good. I'll just get down to the next slide. So our debt team target. So we had a target this year, and we set this target this year when we had no expectations, to be honest with you. But per annum, that was going to be about 350k. We've almost got to that figure already, 235k, and that's just brilliant. We are going to probably get to 500,000 if we continue doing it the way we're doing it. And that's really good. TA debt grows by roughly 750k to 1 million yearly. That's just the nature of it. It's so transigent that people leave and don't pay, and sometimes we don't set up the benefits properly, and we don't get all the information, and people leave before we even set things up. So that's really difficult for us. We've got to get better at doing that, but that's work in progress. The debt team is required to limit the growth to 500k. I mean, that's not really a target, but we've got a 500k bad debt provision. So obviously anything over that, then that's new money. The FTA debt balance in November was 5,220,000. Sorry, 222,000. And it's gone up a bit, and we expect it to go up a bit, but by limiting it to that level, that's just a great win for us. And my last slide is a little bit of a joke, but you know, even Robinson Crusoe's got to pay his rent, and I think my parting shot really is about, you know, we rent places to people, they've got to pay. If they don't pay, we can't run our services. So it's not us being draconian or, you know, giving cost of living crisis, etc., etc.
Right, as Pete's just said, myself, Wendy, I'm the income manager at Believe Housing, and we've got Daniel, who works on my team as a development and performance specialist. We use Voicescape for current tenant arrears at the moment. So just a little bit about ourselves. We are based in the northeast of England. We have approximately 18,000 homes with a rent debit of 76 million. And at the minute, our arrears are maintaining at a static rate and at approximately 4% of the debit. We use QL as our housing management system, and we only use QL to manage arrears. We don't use any other income analytics software. Our team, we have one side that does look after the current tenant arrears, based in Patches, and we've got the other side which looks at former tenant arrears, your sundry debts, your garages. We've also got the rented accounting team in there, which posts the money onto the accounts in a timely manner, does all your reconciliations, sets the rents, that kind of thing. And then we're very lucky to have resource within the team for development and performance, which obviously Dan is the specialist in that area. So it's great. He helps us with processes, any software, any implementations, hence he will lead onto that in a short while. So we started using Voicescape collections in April 22 for current tenancies. We were going through a restructure at the time, so there was a lot of change for the staff, but we felt that Voicescape was going to give them some time back to manage, the higher level complex cases, because we were just going to use the Voicescape for the lower level cases. We had, as usual, some team members who were early adopters. They could see the benefit, but we also had some who weren't as keen. And some of the comments that we had to look at through implementation and try and address were, they were going to lose control over the accounts. They didn't want to work in a contact centre. Customers will be in a queue waiting to speak to us. They don't want to work on other people's cases, and they won't know the customer they're speaking to because they were just expecting all these calls straight back into them, one after the other. So that was something that Dan, who was obviously instrumental in the implementation, had to pick up and try and overcome while he was doing that. So leading on to the implementation, I'll pass over to Dan.
Hiya. So yeah, as Wendy said, so we went live with Voicescape in April last year. So we had quite an ambitious implementation plan. So we really set ourselves around 3 months from start to finish. So I think it was about January last year when we really kicked everything off. So we did put a lot of pressure on ourselves and our IT team especially, and obviously Voicescape as well to really push us into setting up the new processes. Obviously, like any implementation, there was a lot of challenges to overcome, things that we hadn't maybe considered, obviously staff concerns. Some of the staff were great and wanted to jump in and help us, and some of the staff weren't quite sure at the time. But what we really wanted to do was embed Voicescape right into our arrears process. So obviously we know that Voicescape is very flexible. A lot of companies and housing associations use it very differently. For us, we really embedded it into our arrears process. So we wanted to minimise the amount of time staff would have to spend manually processing accounts. So the idea was it would be embedded onto the arrears code. So as it's going through the arrears process and the account's escalating, it would automatically just pick up and be sent to Voicescape the next morning, depending on the arrears stage on the account. So we had various different calls of different severity. So at the very start of the process, I'd get a nice phone call to say, please make a payment. We adapted this quite quickly. We started including links in the phone calls where we can transfer them to the payment line. So that was based on some feedback from the start from one of our staff members. Actually, as soon as we went live with it, they said, "Oh, why don't we update it to say press 1 to speak to the team or press 2 to make a payment?" So it was great having that buy-in from the team. But it also meant that the team felt that they could process accounts and push the customers down the Voicescape route, the ones they know they need to speak to, which in turn meant that any calls that were coming back were the customers who really wanted to engage with us. So obviously we can spend a lot of time making a lot of outbound calls, hundreds of calls, but we wouldn't be able to make the same amount of outbound calls that we can with Voicescape. But the calls that come back to us are the customers who actively want to engage, so that does save the team a lot of time. So what we do is we have an automatic upload which goes every morning to Voicescape based on all of the actions from the previous day. So obviously the team will work through their patches, they'll process their accounts, they'll do whatever they need to do, and then the next morning there'll be a list of accounts, about 100 accounts, say, for example, and that'll upload into Voicescape, and it'll just automatically start between 9 and 10 in the morning, and it'll go off to the customer. Hopefully they respond, and they'll come straight back through to us. So one of the things that we were quite keen on was that the team, like they said, wanted to know who they would be speaking to. So we opted to go with a pop-up. So when the call came back from Voicescape, we used another telephone system called 59, which our call centre uses. And that meant that we could have the client number for the customer present itself on the screen. So the team were really able to get straight into the account, know exactly who they were speaking to, and identify straight away what the problem was and how they can help them. If the customer didn't want to engage with us or didn't answer, obviously Voicescape will leave a voicemail and a text message. So then again, we quickly updated our text messages. We start including links for them to make a payment or links to set up direct debit forms, anything that can help get the customer the right support that they need, and allow us to move the account forward as best we can. I think that's my slides.
Okay, so like any piece of new software, we have to prove it is or was worth the investment. So Voicescape's great. We have regular account meetings with them, and they always bring data with them to let us know how we're performing and how it's working. So as you can see, this is from the first year of using, so from April 22 to March 23, using some information that Voicescape bring to the account meetings. We had 8,749 calls went out. Remember, these are on kind of your lower level arrears. The higher level cases are dealt with slightly differently. With 73% connecting and having a conversation, which I'm happy to say surpassed our expectations, if I'm honest. Because that 73% want to engage with us and have that conversation. One of the key indicators that we use, this is an internal one, you know, it's predictive only. It was all about, well, that's great, we've got 73% of people having a conversation with us, but what's the outcome of this? And now you know yourselves, it's really hard to predict where arrears will be, should have been, cost of living crisis, whatever. We came up with a solution. What we said was, right, okay, when a call goes out from Voicescape, if a customer makes a payment within 72 hours, and that's excluding housing benefit, excluding direct debits and APAs from UC, because we know they're not necessarily guaranteed, but they haven't come off the back of a Voicescape call, we are going to assume that that call has prompted the customer to make a payment. And by doing that, we've got a report set up. And again, within the first year, we had £220,000 of payments made within 72 hours of a Voicescape call. And as I say, that is a purely internal indicator that we decided to use to try and you know, tell us how the system is working for us. And I think another thing to say is we can have 100 calls finished within 2 hours, and that's only with 5 or 6 officers sitting waiting for the calls. I don't think we could have ever have dialed out, rang 100 people within 2 hours and had 73 conversations. So it's surpassed our expectations on performance in speed and time. But I think one of the main things is overall the team like using Voicescape now, and they're happy to suggest changes to improve the service, even those ones that were a bit wary at first. So what we have done is we don't want to just put Voicescape in and then leave it. We're constantly looking to change it and improve it for the team and the customers. So originally we set up the system to use it 5 days a week, but following feedback, we now only use it 3 days a week. We love the text campaigns. We have used those for universal credit for the annual rent increase, data cleansing, and I would say they're quite easy to set up. Sorry, Dan does the setup, but they do seem quite easy to set up, and we do get a good success rate from them as well. And we've just started using the rejected DD files, and that's daily as well. So that sends out a specific text message if a direct debit has failed. So as soon as that rejection comes in, we're on them. They automatically get that text message with a link to pay, call us to discuss your account, that kind of thing. So next steps, we've set up a working group with end users just to see if again there's any changes we can make, what's going on with the system. One thing we're quite excited about is we've been working with Voicescape, and at the moment we'll kind of work on a rota. And for example, if I put an account on, but then Dan picked it up, he would have to deal with my account. We've now worked with Voicescape where they're going to go directly back to the person who wants to speak to that customer, which is great. You know, it gives the team greater ownership of their own accounts and their own cases. And that we're going to hopefully go live with that in November. We're hoping to roll out to the Former Tenant Arrears team and the garages team. Now that we're up and running, we know how it works. We can get them to go back to individual teams. And we've been speaking to Network Homes around their Former Tenant Arrears collections. But I think after Colin's presentation, we'll also be speaking to Colin to see how it's working for them in more detail.
Just want to introduce myself. My name is Edmund. I'm an income team leader with Network Homes. I'm joined with
Natalie, and I'm an income officer, and I actually recover former arrears using Voicescape.
And I'm Rachel Elston. I'm currently an IT project manager and taking our leasehold team through the Voicescape implementation. But I was also an income team leader during the Voicescape implementation for the income team.
So we're just going to take you through the journey that we've had with Voicescape so far. Just a little bit about us. We're Network Homes. We're a charitable housing association providing over 21,000 affordable homes across the London and Hertford region. As you can see, we established in 1974. Our most recent amalgamation happened in 2015, where we came from Stadium Housing to now Network Homes. But as many of you may know, we're in a process of a merger. So as of next week, we will be Sovereign Network Group. So that's a little change. So you've caught us literally a few days between us currently Network Homes and being someone completely different. So the challenge that we have, currently we had obviously the cost of living crisis. So in terms of recovering former debt, it's made our job a bit more difficult in terms of the recovery, the arrangements that we've had with people. Whereas, say, for example, previously to this, we may have had arrangements for £50 a week, a month. That may have been reduced to even £10 or even £5. So it's impacted on the rate or the speed of collection that we've managed to now bring over. Another challenge is we only have one FTA arrears officer. So we have to try and leverage that resource and try and maximize the income from that one sole resource. So previously, we used to use debt tracers and collectors and recovery companies. They were very effective. They was not very cost effective, as the returns for what we got was not on par with what we're currently getting at the moment. But we will delve deeper into that. It took a long time to sort of get hold of people, and it's around the data, but also the length of time it took. And obviously you're going through a third party, so you don't have the control that you would like. So I'm just going to hand you over to Rachel, who will go through why we chose Voicescape as a tool.
So we had the challenge of the cost of living crisis, where we spent a lot more time talking to our residents. It's a more challenging environment now than it used to be pre-COVID and the cost of living, but we really needed a solution to turn the time-consuming activities like calling tenants and not getting an answer, texting tenants, not replying, and leaving voicemails. Because, as you know, we have one income officer on our former, and that was taking the majority of her time. So we did a lot of research. We didn't just look at Voicescape, we looked at a few other solutions, but then we started talking to other housing associations. We read reviews and the good success rates that Voicescape has, and we decided to go with Voicescape because we really wanted more meaningful conversations with our residents, so we could really help support them in this hard time. We needed to be able to reduce our FTA arrears and really help to increase our financial resilience. So we chose to go to Voicescape, and mainly because of the good reviews from others that we received. So I'll take you a bit through what the implementation was like. So it kicked off in September, where in September 2022, where Voicescape gathered some really some low-level requirements from us. So they really spent time finding out what we actually wanted, what we needed, and what we wanted our arrears to look like. So they sat with us for quite a while, and they made quite a thorough plan, so we could really see what the journey was going to look like. Then the building of Voicescape started in October, and it took Voicescape around 3 weeks to actually build our platform. We have 3 different pots set up, but we only currently use it for Former at the moment. And then the little challenging part was we needed Northgate to create us a report that could be uploaded to Voicescape with the different categories that we wanted, like bounce direct debits, UC reduced. We have a whole lot of categories that we actually get uploaded that we've had made. So that was a challenging part, but that was done. We from Former, we actually just at the start decided to manually upload it, but now we're actually in the process of getting that automated. So that should be within a couple of weeks. That should be automated. So it only takes about 5 minutes each to upload, but now we're getting that automated. And then in November 2022, Voicescape actually came to Wembley. All the way from Manchester, I think it is, to test and train. Go back, Natalie. Sorry, we haven't finished. To test and train all of our income colleagues. So I think that was really really helpful. And we went in December. We went live. But I think the really important thing that's we all of us love about Voicescape is that we have continuous ongoing support. We wasn't just given a product and then we didn't just give the money and then they let us go, basically, which you do get from other providers. They really supported us throughout our journey, and they still do. They met with us weekly when we first went live, and now it's every 2 weeks. And we have a customer success manager called Joanne Fairclough, who has extremely good customer service, and whenever we need help from her, she's always there. So I just wanted to say how good Voicescape's customer service is. So next, I'm going to hand over to Natalie, who's going to talk a bit about the results we've had.
Hi, everyone. So being that I'm the only FTA officer using Voicescape to recover the Former arrears, I'm just going to touch on 4 areas that I've noticed through my journey. So the first one's it's the impact on customers. So Network Homes were previously using third-party companies to recover the Former arrears with great difficulty. And this resulted in cold communications for all parties, and it also impacted negatively on the balances that were recovered. So through Voicescape, I've successfully built a familiar rapport with each resident, creating peace of mind and gaining their trust and having positive wins for the company. With the staff and the business objectives, Voicescape's actually removed the heavy duty work. So we would have manually gone out to recover these Former arrears. But now the pools are brought to us. This means that the company actually used less resources whilst gaining a larger reach to more customers in a shorter space of time. So the impact on our staff, with Voicescape, we actually It's enabled us to actually maintain our rapport with residents who have gone on to become former residents. This has hugely impacted the balances recovered to date, as residents have been, they've made payments, they've been able to set up arrangements knowing that they've got direct contact and also clarity if their circumstances change in terms of their situations and cases. It hasn't been an easy journey. It's been enjoyable and a learning experience for sure. So the challenges that so there have been many challenges, but the two main ones that we've actually experienced is, so our Voicescape go live date was December 2022. And at that time, we actually saw a huge increase in external text and voicemail, sort of all the online scams, external. So this actually impacted with my workflow, seeing a longer call duration with each resident. So it basically required me to have more sort of care and attention and effort on my part when I actually identify residents, just so that they knew that they're speaking to their landlord and the call was legitimate. So with that, so that's kind of just sort of added on to the call times, and then also we experienced the impact of the cost of living. So where we previously had former accounts with like a criteria as to how whatever the level of arrears were, a time scale for the arrears to be cleared in, this actually helped us to actually now create flexibility in order to allow residents to still make their payments, so that we're actually then creating win-win for us and the residents. So I'm just going to hand back over to my colleague Edmund so that he can actually explain the recovery
so
journey.
Thank you, Natalie. So Natalie's been doing some excellent work, as she's the sole person who operates Voicescape. The system has been able to generate over 1,000 unique contacts, which is amazing, whereby you'd have to manually do this every single day, and it could have got very monotonous. On average, 76% of customers who listened to the information messages were transferred through. That's a hit rate that we were never getting. Perhaps it's something more to do with the number that is calling out to the tenants. We did notice that when income officers called tenants directly, they may recognize the number, or they may think that, oh, I'm not going to pick up. But it's a good thing where they don't know who's calling at the first instance. Then they pick up, they listen to the message, then they think, okay, maybe I do need to have a conversation with them. So that was a big bonus. And then obviously 72% of people who are contacted made a payment, which is ridiculously good in terms of in the last, it was 9 months. So from December to August, as September has not been published just yet, but we've been able to recover £153,000 with just one income officer. So I would like to even say a big thank you to Natalie for all her hard work in this. So the future, what does it look like? Rachel touched upon it. We did have a trial on the CTA side, which yielded us a great return. As you can see, over the 2 days, we did about 4 hours and we managed to collect 19K. So it's really effective, not just as a CTA tool, as a current tool, but also as a former tenant tool as well. We've had conversations with our leasehold department who are interested to pick it up as well. So we'll be trying to roll it out to them. We've had more in-depth conversations with Voicescape about tailoring it to our needs. So we've recently changed providers for our payment system to PayPoint, and we can integrate Pay by Link through that, so we can target who we need at the right times. As mentioned as well, we wanted to look more about our text campaigns around particular areas or particular times of the year to maximize that return. And then we'll the last piece was looking at automated messages. So as most of you will know, there's different variants of arrears when you're dealing with tenants. Maybe you may have a tenant that is just over the limit, it just needs a little nudge to say, hey, you know, your arrears are coming to a certain level, maybe you've forgotten, maybe things have happened, would you like to make a payment? And then all the way to the extreme side is, you know, you're not making any payments, we've tried to contact you, action will be taken if this hasn't been done. So the way we vary the message, it will tailor to where the arrears balance is, and that's something we're really eager to pursue.
But Colin, I'm going to come to you. I talked about the definition of insanity, and I think I've mentioned this before. If it's difficult to collect CTA, it's doubly difficult to collect FTA, and then you start going to TA, FTA. How's that been on, you know, how's that supported your officers at Luton?
Yeah, let me just touch on the technology stuff. It's the only way to go, to be honest with you. So we'll jump on that. It's going brilliantly. I mean, we've got Voicescape, and we've got another provider doing some other stuff, and we're about to go into a tendering exercise. So I can't go into any great details. I can't big you guys up too much because I don't want to be called anti-competitive. But it's just fantastic. It does give us back some time, to have those more quality contacts and discussions with people who've left temporary accommodation and gone off somewhere else, a little bit surprised, and we get quite a lot of kickback from councillors as well, who they contacted and saying, why should we be paying this back? So for us, it is, as I think Rachel mentioned, it's a great motivator, motivates the staff. They're seeing the money come in. You know, we've gone down from 4 to about 2 members because of some reorganisation. We'll get those back soon. It's just massively motivating when people see results, things happening, instead of, you know, just imagine 10 million former tenants debt. You reconcile it every minute day, but you can't do anything because you've got no resources. How depressing is that? And you bring some resources in, bring in a new system, and it's flying. And it just, and we talk about staff welfare and all that sort of stuff. And this is absolutely brilliant to make sure that you support your staff well.
Yeah, thank you, Colin. I think the phrase that I've heard in all 3 presentations is meaningful conversations. And I think Wendy, Daniel, when we look at the work that Believe have done, we've seen how it's been able to transform that kind of mid-level of debt. And I think what, you know, we often talk about is those that can't pay or won't pay. And often this is used for those that forgot to pay. And what you're doing there is you're streamlining officers' time to make sure that they can support those tenants. So talk to me, Wendy, Daniel, about the impact this has had on supporting tenants through their current tenant arrears journey.
Yes, I think, like you say, it's often a reminder. I think we've all been there, haven't we? We've all forgot to pay something, and then you get a reminder, think, oh, right, I'll quickly do that. So it's great that they've got the link there. But it's great that the connecting through, that we can help them and support them. You know,
yeah,
they're not just scared by getting a letter, maybe that they don't quite understand. They're connecting through and having that conversation. And because we're doing that quite effectively, because of the call rate, that does give us the time back for the officers to work on those higher level complex cases.
Yeah. And I think all of you have talked about the kind of the collaborative approach to deploying collections, and the fact that you've listened to your officers, you've taken that feedback, you've maybe changed the way you deploy the service, and how Voicescape have supported that. So I think I think you played quite heavily on it, Wendy and Daniel, that, you know, the buy-in from the staff and that journey you went on with the staff to the point that they're now, you know, incredibly pleased with it. And so talk to me a bit about that, Daniel. How's that been to support your officers?
It's been great, to be honest. I think obviously it's like everything when something new comes in, it's going through that initial change and a little bit of resistance. And I think once they realise the benefit in using it, and obviously how easy it was to use, I mean, from their point of view, with it all being automated, so the calls just go out, they just basically carry on and do what they've always done and process accounts as normal. And then because it's all automated, it does it in the background, contacts the customer, gives the customers new ways to engage with us as well. Sometimes the customer might not need to ring us, or they can respond to a text. Or, but I think that really allows the officer time to really, like Wendy said, focus on the high level accounts, the accounts that need the attention, and it gives the customers the option to engage with us the way they want to engage with us, and when they want to as well.
Great. And a specific question to Wendy and Daniel from Johnny Brown at Great Places. So Johnny's asked this question, if I can put it to you. Using Voicescape for low-level arrears only, what balance does this go up to? Or is it an escalation stage? And he suggested maybe notice of seeking possession. And then a follow-on, how many officers do you typically have available to take calls at any point in time?
In terms of the escalation process, so it starts at the start of our process, our arrears process, which obviously as soon as they kind of fall around about a week's worth of arrears, it kind of kicks into gear then. But then from that point, it's not really a monetary value. It just escalates through the process as and when the officer thinks that they want to escalate the account, or whenever our housing management system escalates the account. So there will be, generally it is low level arrears in terms of, we're not talking like the thousands of pound ones. But there could be some accounts which have a slightly higher balance. It just depends on what the office has been doing in the meantime.
Yeah, and I suppose that's somewhat in the flexibility of the system. You can put into it whatever you want. I think Rachel talked about putting through a failed direct debits campaign. I mean, the results from that was just phenomenal. You know, 4 hours work and you're collecting 20 grand. You know, a failed direct debit is a really high risk debt. So the ability to speak to somebody very soon after that direct debit fails is crucial. So excellent, thank you. So some of the statistics that have come out of this, everybody's talking about 70-80% conversation levels. I don't think without technology like this, anybody's able to achieve that volume of activity without ploughing huge amounts of resource to it. And, you know, if we're looking at Officer of the Year awards, blimey, 153 grand in 7 months from one officer, and that's it. It's just phenomenal. So I suppose I'd implore you just to think to your FTA debt team, are your officers able to achieve that kind of volumes? Is this something you should be speaking to us about? Okay. Oh, there's another poll. Okay, so let's have a look at what that poll is. Are you interested in reducing arrears as soon as this financial year? Okay, let's see where this goes. A couple of people said no. They're not interested in reducing arrears this financial year. However, the vast majority, I don't think it's any surprise, are saying yes, they would like to. So an open question to all of you, and there's lots of people asking here about, there's a couple of questions around ease of implementation. Does anyone want to maybe respond about their experience and speed at which the system was implemented?
Yeah, quite easy because I wasn't involved in it. But my staff said it was really quick and went quite smoothly.
Yeah,
that's great.
So it only took Voicescape 3 weeks to actually build the platform for us. The total was about 3 months, but that's because we had to work with Northgate also to create the report. But if you think about projects in general, you normally get some challenges and issues, but this was really smooth. We didn't come across, there's a few hiccups at the start, but because Voicescape's customer service is so good, it just gets sorted straight away. So yeah, from the start to going live was only 3 months, so, and quite smooth as well, so it was good.
That's brilliant. And I suppose it's a point worth reiterating there. You're all using very different housing management systems. And needless to say, you know, we can work with all of them. Question here around the pay by link. Someone asking, do they have to have pay point for that? The answer is no. We also work with other payment providers, the likes of AllPay, the likes of Pay 360. So if that is who your payment provider is, then obviously we can provide the pay by link through that as well as PayPoint. Let me just double check if there's any more questions as we draw this webinar to an end. Let me see what this says here. Oh, okay, this is an interesting one. I can help, but I'll also put it out to the audience there. Have you found any challenges using Voicescape for tenants with vulnerabilities or non-digital savvy users? So my question from a Voicescape point of view is we use flags in your data. So if you do have any tenants that you don't feel will be suitable to engage with over the phone using the automation, then we just exclude them. So what we don't want to do is engage with people using the wrong method. This is all about connecting with the right people, right method, right moment. So if we've identified people with vulnerabilities, we typically exclude them, and they would maintain that one-to-one relationship with their officers. But anything that the team would like to add to that, about how you maybe segment your data to
So internally, we created an arrears action code where if we want it, like, because there's things like breathing space and people you spoke to last week that you don't want to go on Voicescape, or even vulnerable residents, or those who make like complaints a lot, you don't really want to go on Voicescape. We've made an action code that can exclude people from Voicescape, as well as you give us the ability to exclude people on the platform, so we can choose who are uploading and who are not uploaded, which I think helps.
That's what basically we've done as well.
Yeah.
So the question from Michael is around when you contact tenants using the message, is it automated? So the typical process, Michael, looks like this. We lead with voice, clues in the name, Voicescape will lead with voice. If we're not able to engage with the tenant using voice, we'll leave a voicemail. So they've got a footprint that we've tried to call them and asking them to ring back. But then, yes, we will follow up with a text message. And that text message, depending on the scale of the debt and the escalation stage, will differ. So it might ask them to call back in to speak to you. It might also then have a pay by link. So if it's a low level debt, it might then call back in. And do we charge per successful call? No, we don't. So we encourage maximum use of the system. So it's a fixed cost for the term of the contract, and that is to encourage maximum use of the system. I don't want anybody coming into this final half of the year thinking, better not use Voicescape because it's going to land us with a hefty bill. Not at all. So anything that you do is included within the cost. And the last question from Mark here, have you seen performance levels maintain or drop off? So I can tell you now, our longest serving customers have been using collections for well over a decade, maintained high levels of engagement and collections. Obviously, there's tweaks that we do need to make to the service over a period of time. We might change the messages up. But, you know, these are all relatively new customers to Voicescape. But, you know, we've got customers that have been using this for 10, 11, 12 years, continually seeing high levels of engagement. Have partners seen savings or value for money that they can quantify? I think the numbers they've shown today, Mark, hopefully demonstrate huge returns on their investment through the increased collections and productivity of their offices. But anything any of you would like to add to that question around value for money?
We recouped our money within 3 months of using Voicescape. The amount we spent on it within 3 months, we've got that back. So anything after that was bringing in our collection. I'm not sure about anyone else.
And as Colin rightly said, this is all new money. This is money that we would have written off, wouldn't have had it, we wouldn't have cared about it. But now, obviously, the higher ups, they're seeing that, well, we can make that money there. So why not? That's what it's all about at the end of the day.
You are the higher up. You are the higher up.
There you go. And you know, and I was seeing lots of nods from Colin, Daniel, and Wendy there as well. So, you know, what I would say to anybody that's considering this and maybe got more questions around this, get in touch with your account manager, get in touch with your business development manager, and they'll be able to support you. You know, 6 months left in the financial year, plenty of time to have a big impact here. So let's have as many productive conversations as we can do, as many as these guys are having with their customers. And we'll all have a great end to the financial year.